And now, That Financial Guy with Keith and Jack Wilson, spreading a wealth of information.
All right, thank you for joining us for That Financial Guy. My name is Keith Wilson.
And I'm Jack Wilson.
We are a father and son team. We're both practicing financial advisors. We own our own financial planning firm, and we wanted to start this podcast to help folks along their personal finance journey, right, Jack?
Yeah, absolutely.
And before we get started, here's a fun fact. You ready for a fun fact, Jack?
Yeah, let's go.
All right, fun fact. Jack is the most used male's name in movies today.
And somehow we figured that out, and it was like between Jack, John, and what else? Joe?
Jack, John, and Joe.
I would have guessed Joe.
Or John. But Jack. I mean, you got Jack Reacher.
Yeah.
You got Jack Ryan.
Actually, Tom Cruise does a lot of movies with his name Jack.
So, fun fact, that has nothing to do with financial planning.
It does not.
No, we want to talk about today, since this is our first podcast out there. And by the way, hit the subscribe button and be sure to listen to our podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, right? Is that how it goes?
I think it is. It's our first time. Let's do it.
All right. I want to talk, Jack, about making sense of financial planning.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a lot of confusion, a lot of disbelief of what is financial planning. Because over the years, I've heard people come in and they say, I need help with my finances. I want to start investing and so forth. And it's all financially related. But a lot of times people don't want to go to a financial planner. Yeah.
And I actually saw a survey where it said almost 50% of people would rather go to a dentist than a financial planner. I'm about to go to the dentist on Monday. Would you rather
go
2 years?
Would you rather go sit down with yourself and talk about financial planning or go to the dentist?
I need to go to the dentist. It's been a while.
Yeah.
So,
well, and people need to go to a financial planner, but I think people think about going to a dentist as being painful.
Sometimes, yeah.
Well, yeah, a lot of times. You don't want people poking in your mouth and with needles and whatever, but
I can also see that relating to financial planning, if they're like, I don't know where to even begin with it.
Yeah, so the pain points, in my experience, just listening to folks, you almost feel like you got to undress yourself financially in front of a financial planner. You feel intimidated. Oh, they're going to make me feel stupid or judge me. And that's not the way it should be, and that's not the way we work, I know. But financial planning is important. And I think a lot of advisors out there, I've been in these, conventions where they kind of talk over people's head. And they throw out
the bad ones, yeah.
Well, they want to impress people with what they know. And yes, some of the terms that we use internally are important with our research and, building plans. But this is what I think, Jack. I think people really need to get a sense of, hey, here are my concerns. I want to make sure I can retire comfortably. I don't want to outlive my money. I want to make sure my spouse is taken care of, survivorship, in the event I die prematurely. I want to make sure my kiddos are taken care of with college planning. So essentially, those are the three major components of a financial plan. Now, within each one, they have all their intricacies.
Different little sectors, yeah.
The little sectors, and we can spin off on that. But let's kind of go down the list, all right? Let's talk about retirement planning first. So that's a
big one, yeah.
That's the big concern, and that's the one that's going to probably take the most amount of money that you're going to need. And I think most people say, well, what's the most common question?
How much money do I need to retire?
Yep. How much money do I need to retire? And it used to be years ago, you got to have $1 million to retire. You think that's true?
Not anymore.
No. It could be less for some people.
Folks, yeah.
For some folks. So it really,
depends on how you're living and what you're doing with the cash.
Right. I mean, it depends on what are you going to do with the cash when you retire? What are your goals? So when we build a plan for retirement planning, the checklist, I would say, number one, well, how much money do you want to have in retirement? Mm-hmm. What are your living expenses? what is that going to look like?
Right.
So once we have that, then we can wrap around, all right, where are you now with your assets? The other question to ask about retirement not is how much. One is how much. Mm-hmm. What's the other one? Other than how much you need, what's another question that...
Well, we're going to ask another question. When do we want to retire?
Yeah, what's that target date?
Right.
And so a lot of people say, well, I'm 40. I'd love to retire when I'm 60.
Or when younger folks come in, they're saying, hey, I want to retire when I'm 40.
40 or 50. And so our job as planners is, all right, we don't know yet until we plug in all the data in the software and the plan. And sometimes we'll say, all right, if you want to retire at 50 with X number of dollars and you want have all these goals of vacation or whatever, this is the path you got to take. And then a lot of times when we do that, they say, well, we can't do that.
Ta-da!
That's when the ta-da lights go off and say, yeah, you can't. So let's tweak it a little more and get a little more realistic.
And on that, I would say, when people are saying, I feel a little bit of uncomfortableness when I go into a financial planner's office or they feel overwhelmed. Showing them that and just showing them, hey, this is the data right in front of you, it kind of just addresses it all and makes them feel, whether it's, hey, I can or can't retire at the age I want, it's kind of like saying, all right, this is what it is. It's laid out in front of me. I'm going to take it for what it is.
It's either going to give you confidence or it's going to give you reality.
But reality can lead to confidence. You just got to know where you are.
Right. But yeah, we've got to know the monthly expense you need. We need to know the how, the when, and that's just like you said. When we plug in all the data, it kind of can say your when date is a little off.
Right.
We need to adjust that. And it's, for some people, many times we say, you know what, you can do even more because you were great savers or what have you. But leading up to retirement, as we get closer, and I would say about 5 years into it, I always recommend, all right, once we know that monthly living expense you're going to need, let's have 2 years of that worth saved.
Put it away.
In cash.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not talking about emergency fund. This is preparing you. Now, again, you don't do it 20 years out, maybe 5 years or less. As you get really close to that goal line, have 2 years of cash of that, matching that 2 years worth of living expense, saved up in cash, set aside. Why do we need to do that? It's a good question, because a lot of people say, well, wait a minute, I could be earning interest on that, or I could
we gotta worry about market downturn.
Right. Well, exactly. So if you retired when the market is going down, then you need to pull money out of those investments.
Right.
Well, you're getting a double whammy.
Just losing it.
You're losing twice. So here, all right, no worries. We got that saved up in the cash account. We pull from that, and it gives those investments time to recover. So that's another thing that we should have on the checklist. So speaking of retiring, one of the biggest income sources, I don't know if I would say biggest.
Well, we're talking about Social Security.
Yeah, we're talking about Social Security. So
that's another two questions of when are you going to take it?
Right. When are you going to take it?
When is going to determine how much. And
some people say, I want to take it as early as I can. Well, you got to be careful. So, I met with someone not too long ago, and they were going to retire when they're 65, and they're getting ready to turn 62. And they said, I'm going to go ahead and pull that trigger on the Social Security benefit. Well, guess what? There is a penalty, an earnings limit, and it changes every year. So if you retire before what is called full retirement age, and for most of our listeners today, it's age 67. Some it's age 66, 6 months and all that. But for most people, it's going to be age 67. That's full retirement age. That's when you get a larger check versus age 62. But if you're still working and you're making in 2022, if you're making more than roughly $19,000, for every $2 over that, you got to give $1 back.
Right.
So sometimes it doesn't make sense to pull the trigger early. But That's where the software and the planning comes into play. What is the optimal time to take Social Security? This is something on the checklist that we go through with our clients. And Jack, I know you're a big 3-bucket guy.
That's the holy trifecta.
The holy trifecta.
The tax deferred, tax free, taxable accounts or buckets, I should say, that you want to have set up going into retirement. And I would say that's kind of a major thing that we kind of preach to a lot of our clients and stuff. But I mean, we're kind of looking at why do we want these 3 buckets?
Well, in taxes.
And taxes,
The tax deferred bucket, it's going to be something like your IRA, 401k, 403b,
and taxes,
employer sponsored account or individual retirement account.
Like
tax free bucket is the Roth IRA, and one could say HSA. So that could give you tax free income in retirement. So I'm going to back up and have a little disclosure here about the Roth. Certain rules you got to follow in order for that tax free. You got to have it for 5 years or 59 and a half, age 59 and a half, whichever is later, or you face a 10% penalty and you're taxed on the growth if you pull it out before then. So you need to get with your tax advisor and make sure that's right for you. But we like that bucket, and we like the taxable bucket too, which is a good old investment account, good old brokerage account,
whatever it is.
And that's taxed differently with capital gains tax and dividends. And the reason you and I both like that so much, we don't know where taxes are going to go. And the tax laws always change, so we want to be prepared for that. And also the software sets it up. Which bucket are we going to pull from first when we need that income? So,
I mean, you're not like, once you get to retirement, it would kind of screw you up. Speaking of taxes, depending on what bucket you're in, if you only have one.
Yeah. And speaking of, goals of when to retire, then we got to look at, okay, is that 10 years from now, 20 years? Invest according to your time horizon.
Right.
So usually the younger you are, say 20, 30, even 40, usually we would recommend to get a little more aggressive with it because historically, markets have good growth over a longer period of time, and we want to take advantage of that. But invest according to your time horizon. And as we get a little closer, maybe we have a little glide path of, all right, let's put on the brakes a little bit instead of going 80, 90 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Let's invest a little more accordingly. Another thing on the checklist is strive to be debt-free.
Yeah. I mean, you don't want to go into retirement still paying off your mortgage. I mean, that's the biggest one.
That's the biggest
usually.
And people say, well, mortgage is a good debt to have. No. Tax deductions, they've kind of reduced those on the interest and so forth. But I would say have no debt going into retirement because now you're on a fixed income. You're relying on what you've worked for all your life. So.
Right.
Another thing is health insurance. If you're retiring before 65, before you go on Medicare, we got to account for health insurance.
And it's expensive.
It is very expensive. And there's ways you can get subsidies and things like that, but take that into consideration on your checklist and planning for retirement. Long-term care is another issue. If you're in your mid-50s, I would say let's start looking at that. And as you get closer to 65, really get involved with Medicare as far as, all right, how does this work? Because it's very confusing.
Yeah.
So you want to be ahead of the game.
I would say a big one that we haven't talked about already is, what are you wanting to do in retirement? I mean, it's kind of, we're talking about all this money stuff, but what are we doing? It kind of relates to money, but
yeah, you got to have a goal.
Do we want to take vacations? Do we want to buy a house or whatever?
You want to RV and travel?
Yeah.
And so some people say, I want to travel. Okay, let's stop. We get really specific when we plan. Where do you want to travel? Well, I just want to. Are you talking about in country?
Exactly.
Out of the country?
Where is it?
Well, main thing is we're trying to get an idea of
how much is
this going to cost in today's dollars, and so that's not part of your living expenses. That's a goal that we can plan for.
Right.
You don't want to sit around the house all day in retirement. Studies have shown the more active and the more social you're going to be, the more of a
the longer
healthy
you're gonna live.
lifestyle you're going to have. So retirement is one of those big components of a financial plan. Another one that people are concerned about. Another one is I want to make sure my spouse is taken care of.
Absolutely.
If I should die prematurely, we got to plan for that because you're going to have a loss of income. And so one of the areas we address is good old life insurance.
Right.
Life insurance can provide that income that's lost, and we plan accordingly. So one of the things we hear a lot is, I want $1 million policy.
That's not always the case.
That's not always the case.
Sometimes
for some reason, $1 million is just how much.
It's like a movie thing.
It is a movie. Like, how much do I need to retire? $1 million. How much life insurance do you need? It's not always the answer.
Right.
So we look at and we analyze exactly. Well, try to be as exact as we can.
Yeah.
How much life insurance do you need to provide lost income to your spouse? And another planning is maybe to pay off the debt.
Right.
So you don't want to leave your spouse with lost income and still encumbered with debt. So that's life insurance. Disability income is another one. And then some people will then we can get into different types of life insurance policies. I don't want to do a life insurance seminar here.
Not really.
You can do, term insurance is one, permanent insurance is another. Term is really the cheapest form of insurance because you're paying for a death benefit. That's it, no cash value. We lean more towards that area than the permanent insurance, but we have to look at the specific need. But the estate planning comes into issue. It's,
I think that's kind of difficult for some people to get into, when you're talking about, hey, we need to set up a will, power of attorney. That's something that needs to be addressed.
And they don't want to talk about now. Let's back up. We're not attorneys. We don't write wills.
Right.
Consider us the architects that say, okay, you need a will for this reason. If you have small children under 18, you got to name a guardian. We don't want the courts to decide. So
everybody wants to think about their own death, but especially thinking about the ones that you love,
Right.
Insurance, wills, power of attorney, all that is necessity.
And that's why it's called planning.
Yes,
You're planning for a future event. But it's getting your house in order.
Right.
And getting it taken care of. So survivor checklist, that's another big thing of financial planning. And the last big third component would be college funding.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of couples come to us and they've got a 1-year-old, 2-year-old, and they say, we want to help with the college planning.
Well, that's where the questions come in from us.
They're big questions.
Well, I'm saying, all right, are they going to go in state, out of state?
The cost is different.
Much different. Are we talking about a 529 plan, education savings plan, whatever it is?
Jack, I had one time, father comes to me, first time. The child was not born yet.
Already setting it up?
Yes. He said, she's 7 months pregnant. I want to set up a 529 plan. I said, well, we need to wait. But
that child needs to be born.
But that's true planning.
Right. Good for him.
Good for him. But, obviously we couldn't do it until the child was born.
He probably came the day the child was born to your office.
It was soon after. But I said, well, it's not too early to at least talk about it and get an idea.
You also want to know, are you fully funding this or kind of just waiting to see if they get a scholarship? I mean, you're setting it up way before then, but you hope they get that.
But we're very specific in this.
Just like the other components of a financial plan. You got to get nitty gritty with this stuff.
In a 529, which is a college plan, and we got to know all the rules about that and so forth, and we educate our folks on that. But it's almost very restrictive to either higher education. They changed the rules now that you could use it for private tuition and things like that. But that question comes up. What if little Johnny doesn't go to college? We have no idea at age 1 or 2 years old what they're going to do. But we plan for that. We can change beneficiaries. It's not that they have to use it right when they graduate high school, but there are other plans that you can use for college that are less restrictive as well. But all of this comes into play in developing that financial plan. Those three big components, and we also address budgets and all of that stuff, debt reduction,
it's definitely going to look different for every single person.
Everybody, because everybody's going to be different.
Right.
Not everybody has children for college planning.
But I mean, going back to what I was saying about, undressing this plan is when you're coming in, you might be a little intimidated. It does not have to be like that whatsoever, because we're laying out, all right, this is what we're going to do. This is right in your face right now. Take it or leave it.
And most people will say it's an eye-opening experience.
I don't think we've had clients come in a while that are leaving with a frown on their face.
No. Almost always they say, I feel so much better about my situation. So that's what a financial plan can do for you, and consider all these parts to it. What is that saying you say all the time? Easy and simple, or
it's not easy, but it's simple.
It's not easy, but it's simple.
When you're going through this plan, I mean, life happens, and whenever we make a plan, we tell people, hey, life is going to happen. You're not going to fully follow this because things come up. But
that's a good point, because it's changeable.
This plan is not easy, but it's simple. It's a living, breathing plan. That's what we always tell people.
And that's why you should have a relationship with your advisor, with your planner, because things do happen. But
get back on track with things,
Yeah. So there we are. Hope this makes financial planning sense. And it's not easy, but it is simple. I would recommend, work with a planner that you can trust and that you can develop a relationship working towards those goals, because it's all about goals. So I think that's it. That's the first episode in the can. Making sense of financial planning. Cheers to you. We'll be doing these podcasts on track every 2 weeks. So again, subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast. See you next time.
Peace.
Thank you for joining us on That Financial Guy. For more information, get in touch with Keith and Jack at wfa-nc.com. Remember to subscribe to the podcast to hear more information to help you pursue your financial goals.